Fighting is intensifying in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo as M23 rebels are advancing. After the city of Goma, DRC's second largest eastern city, Bukavu, has fallen too. Now the rebels are looking to capture more territory. Their sights are on Kinshasa, the capital of this African country. War crimes, mass graves, and capitulation by Congolese security forces. That's been the story so far on the battlefield. But of it, is diplomacy failing? Can the tough nut that Rwanda has shown itself to be cracked? Can a minerals deal buy Kinshasa security cover? If not, how real is the prospect of M23 rebels pushing all the way to Kinshasa? Let's find out. Earlier this month came a shocker. 70 Christians were beheaded with machetes by members of the Allied Democratic Forces or ADF, an Islamic State-linked group. The attackers had rounded up victims and executed them inside a church in Kasanga in North Kivu province. After the attack, many Christians fled the region seeking safety. In fact, tens of thousands of residents of eastern DRC are fleeing to neighboring countries. Starting February, 40,000 Congolese nationals, mostly women and children, have arrived in Burundi. Their only hope, survival under international protection.
The other day, we had even a case of a woman who was transporting her children and not knowing that they were already dead, actually. When she dropped them in the camp, two of the children just passed on based on exhaustion. And so we have, the conditions are very bad for the people who are arriving. We have mostly women and so many children, so many children.
The humanitarian situation in eastern DRC is dire. Besides persecution on religious grounds, looting, sexual violence, and armed assaults have become widespread.
M23's offensive in North Kivu and South Kivu has increased the vulnerability of girls and women to conflict-related sexual violence. Mass displacement, the influx of combatants and prisoners, and the proliferation of weapons have considerably exacerbated the risk. At the same time, logistical and security constraints continue to hamper the United Nations' ability to verify reported cases.
What you see now is a mass grave where victims of the recent clashes in Bukavu were buried by the Red Cross.
We were alerted by the community and even by some authorities that there were bodies scattered here and there with no family to collect them and bury them.
There is little hope for civilians caught up in the fighting because reports suggest that DRC's security forces are surrendering to the rebels without a fight. See this. Crowds of Congolese police officers singing and clapping. Hundreds of them have switched sides since the fall of Bukavu and now report to the M23 rebels. That's not all. DRC is losing military support on the battlefield. See this report. Burundi is withdrawing its forces from eastern DRC where they had been fighting against M23 rebels. Burundi has had soldiers in eastern DRC for years. While initially they hunted down Burundian rebels there, in recent times they were helping DRC in the fight against M23. So their withdrawal is yet another blow to Congo's army that is struggling to halt the advance of rebels. But international efforts are on to defuse the crisis. The United Nations Security Council recently adopted a French-drafted resolution. It called on Rwanda's military to stop supporting the M23 rebel group in eastern DRC and immediately withdraw all troops from Congolese territory without preconditions. It also urged the DRC and Rwanda to return to diplomatic talks to achieve lasting peace. But DRC and Rwanda don't see eye to eye. and presidents of both the countries even skipped the recent peace talks on the conflict. DRC's President Felix Tshisekedi alleges that M23 is the creation of the Rwandan military. He says the rebels are used by Rwanda to defend its interests in Congo, such as looting minerals. He also accuses Rwanda of trying to disguise M23 as a Congolese armed movement. But Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, denies funding or directing M23. While he acknowledges that Rwandan troops are present in Congo, he denies supporting M23 with arms and troops. His denial flies in the face of evidence presented by the UN of Rwanda's complicity with M23 rebels. President Tshisekedi says his government would like to talk to Rwanda, which is pulling the strings of M23, and not to the rebels directly. But Rwanda insists the conflict must be resolved between Congolese leaders and the rebels. So the stalemate continues. In another development, the US imposed sanctions on an M23 spokesman and a Rwandan government minister for links to the violence in eastern Congo. While the DRC welcomed the action, saying it wants to see more such measures, an angry Rwanda said sanctions won't resolve the conflict. But this is not the first such instance of sanctions in this conflict. In the past too, the United Nations and the United States sanctioned M23 leaders over allegations of war crimes such as sexual violence and killings of civilians. Analysts say the United States can do much more. For instance, by pushing the World Bank to cut Rwanda's funding, much of which is provided by the US government, and also by reviewing Rwanda's lucrative role as a supplier of troops to peacekeeping missions. But some analysts think more aggressive action from the West is unlikely, as they point to how Rwanda has cultivated relationships with Western powers by hosting major sporting events and concerts with celebrities like Kendrick Lamar. While Tshisekedi is hopeful, regional efforts to resolve the crisis are floundering. Calls by the African Union for a ceasefire have so far gone unheeded. So what are the options before President Tshisekedi now? Well, there aren't many. For one, he is planning to forge a unity government in the hope that it will help resolve the crisis. But the political opposition in DRC is criticizing the move. It blames the current crisis on the president's mismanagement of the situation. It also accuses him of being more concerned about saving his government than saving Congo. Tshisekedi has another plan too. He is looking to offer the United States and Europe a stake in DRC's vast mineral wealth. Remember, DRC is considered to be one of the world's wealthiest countries in terms of natural resources. Much of the world's coltan comes from there. Chances are that your smartphone and computer are powered by that coltan. DRC also has more than half of the world's cobalt reserves. These are used in electric vehicles. As of today, China has far greater access to DRC's mineral wealth than the United States. It may be noted here that the European Union had negotiated with Rwanda and had agreed to give it about $935 million in return for access to minerals like tin, tungsten, and gold. But Tshisekedi says those minerals are plundered by Rwanda from his country, and so he accuses the EU of being complicit in the looting of Congo. But now, the European Parliament has called for the deal to be suspended until Rwanda stopped all interference in Congo. For now, Tshisekedi is hoping that a minerals deal with the US and Europe will help DRC get more security and stability in return. He would also like more Western pressure put on Rwanda as part of a potential deal. We must note here that the ongoing conflict between the M23 and the DRC government has historical roots, and hence there are no easy answers. The conflict is rooted in the aftermath of the 1994 Rwandan genocide and long-standing ethnic tensions between the Tutsi and Hutu communities. 30 years ago, about 800,000 civilians, mostly Tutsis, were slaughtered in Rwanda by members of the Hutu majority. After the genocide, many of the Hutus in Rwanda fled into Congo to avoid facing justice. M23 claims its mission is to protect the Congolese Tutsi ethnic minority. In Congo, they are called Banya Mulenge. M23 accuses the Tshisekedi government of failing to protect them from persecution. So to sum it up, the task before the international community is cut out. Get the warring sides and those calling the shots, including Rwanda, on the table. Take humanitarian aid to the needy and achieve a ceasefire leading up to a political solution to the conflict, or risk not only the fall of Kinshasa but also the start of a wider regional war, much like the two Congo wars that left behind a bloody trail in Africa. That's all in this edition of Connecting the Dots. We will see you in the next episode with more raging issues. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us in the Delhi newsroom. This is Munmun Bhattacharya signing off. Take care and stay safe.